What's up, everybody? This is Chris with the Realty Medics here. I'm here today with Brian Tewes. What do you do, Brian?
A lot.
All right.
But the main thing I do is I own and operate a residential mortgage brokerage here in Central Florida, in Orlando.
Cool. What's kind of the backstory of that in 30 seconds?
The backstory is I got into the business by accident. I bought my first place and was one of the very rare people that said, wow, I actually like this mortgage stuff. So I studied it, got my license, and then next thing you know, went 2 feet in, went full time into it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Cool, very cool. So small business owner then, right?
Yes.
How many employees do you have right now?
I have one employee, but then I've got 8 independent contractors.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so doing well. How long have you been in business?
5 years.
Okay, cool,
5 years.
very cool. So I understand you have some investment properties. Want to tell me about those a little bit?
Sure. So they're scattered throughout Central Florida, and really it all started with my first place that I bought that I lived in, and I turned it into investment property, moved to a next spot, and I basically rinsed and repeated that at least the first couple times.
Okay.
And then from that point forward, it was looking for, I say small properties, but lower price properties where at that time you have to do 20% down, but 20% down on $100,000 or $120,000 condo is a lot more feasible than a $400,000 single family home. So that's kind of how I got started.
What got you into that? Down that line of thinking and as real estate as an investment possibility? What started that fire for you?
My long-term goal of I want $10,000 a month in passive income.
Okay.
I'm like, how the heck am I going to get there? Because that's a crazy goal, right? 6 figures where you don't have to do anything. How am I going to do that? And real estate was basically like, that's going to be a huge piece. Real estate's going to be a major key to me hitting that $10,000 a month passive income goal.
Okay.
The book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki definitely pushed me towards that even more.
Okay, cool. What would you say to someone who right now doesn't think it's feasible for them? What would you say is really, if I'm going to start planning out for a year or 2 years in advance, I want to buy my first either home or my first rental property. What would your strategy be, or what would you say to that person?
I would say you can absolutely do it. It's a lot easier than what a lot of people think or what the general public might be. If you've never owned a home before, you can get in with 3% down. Not 10, not 5, not 20%, 3%. So you can get in there, you can live there for a bit, 6, 9, 12 months, go to the next place. When you buy the next place, it's only 5% down. So you don't need this huge chunk of money. And now that first home that you got in with, 3%, that ends up being your first property. And again, just kind of rinse and repeat. Okay. So that's how you could start.
So we could really get in for 3%. So we had a $250,000 house. We could realistically get in for around
$7,500 is your down payment. Yeah.
Okay.
And then let's say your closing costs might be 8, 9, so all in $15,000. $15,000 to truly buy your first home. It's going to end up being your first investment property.
Now, does that not seem very feasible? Now, you talked about the passive income goal for you. A lot of people, we don't talk about the home as an asset. How much in your experience, what have you seen as far as appreciation on your properties? Let's start with that first property. How much is it appreciated, ballpark?
So the very first property that I bought, it appreciated about $50,000, $60,000, and this was over the course of about 2.5 years.
What year do you?
So I bought it in 2017.
Okay.
I sold it in 2000 and actually so 3 years. I sold it in 2020. So in 3 years' time, I gained about $50,000 to $60,000 in equity. Okay. Right about there. So I sold that home. I took that amount of money and I put it into a property that made me more money. So a lot of people, like we were talking about this earlier, people that just think buy a home, get the equity, sell it to buy a bigger home, right? Yeah. Well, I bought a small investment property, let that thing grow, had tenants in there, right, that are also paying down my mortgage. 3 years goes by. It's appreciated. I sold it. I make $60,000. I take that $60K and I go into the next property, a little bit of a bigger one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how would I do that? Let's use myself as an example, or some people I know. We only have one house right now, but we got a ton of equity in that house. We don't want to sell the asset. My own personal house has appreciated almost 50% since we bought it. Great return on investment. Granted, hot market, but how would I go about getting to the next property and keeping the property I have to turn it into a rental? What would you
Yeah,
suggest?
that's a great question. So you'd have one of two options. So option one, you could do what's called a cash out refinance, which is you pay off your current mortgage with a new one. A lot of people don't like that option because your mortgage rate, like a lot of other people's, is probably really low.
Very low, yeah.
Right? So you don't want to get rid of that. But that nevertheless is still an option where you'll end up right now probably somewhere in the 6% range, but you can tap into that equity, have that cash, and then go. A second option that you would have is called a home equity line of credit.
Or a HELOC,
Or
right?
a HELOC,
Okay.
yes. So you can get a HELOC where you do not touch your current mortgage rate, and you just take cash out of the equity. Here's the catch though, if you go with the HELOC, the rates are going to be higher. Those rates right now hover on the low side, about 8%, high side, 10, 11%. But what I look at and what I tell any of my clients is, let's say whether it be the HELOC or the cash out, it doesn't matter. With whichever option you go, let's say that it adds an extra $400, $500 a month to your payment, right? If you did the refi cash out, that 2 or 3% rate you had is gone. That's 6% now. And let's say your monthly payment went up $400.
Okay.
Or you get the HELOC, you didn't touch your mortgage rate, but that HELOC's monthly payment is $400. Either way, $400 increase, right? Who cares about that $400 if you turned that $60, $70, $100,000 you just got into a $600 profit? And and that's solely profit. We're not even talking about the fact that you took that $60, $70, $80, $100,000 in equity, you got another home, you rent that one out, they're now paying your mortgage down. That home is going to gain equity year over year, at least 3 to 5%, and that's me being conservative, and still profiting. So that's where it's like, okay, you might have an extra $400 you have to pay per month, but you shouldn't be thinking solely on that. You should be thinking about, I'm gaining more equity. You're going to gain thousands of dollars in equity on that new home. That's going to absolutely erase the $400 a month increase.
So what you're saying is it needs to be a long-term goal.
Absolutely.
You have to have the long-term goal and a long-term vision. And doesn't that make you scary? What's going to happen with the market, though?
Yeah.
You're buying a second house.
Yeah.
Or you own a house now. I'm going to take that $100K in equity. When I sell the house, I'm going to take that $100K out. Why would that be a bad idea in your opinion?
So a bad idea on taking cash out of your equity is if it just sits there and you don't use it. If you don't use it, or if you don't do your research, you don't partner up. If you don't partner up with the right team, right property manager, right mortgage guy, right realtor, you need a strong team around you. So when you take this 70, 80, 100K cash out, you know where the heck to put that money, and you know that it's a solid investment. It's a solid one. That's really where you need to mitigate as much risk as you can when you take that money out. So it's a bad idea if you don't have a team. It's a bad idea to take that cash out if you think you're going to do it all on your own. If you're going to do it on your own, you probably shouldn't do it. But if you have people around you that are going to help you and guide you, then yeah, go for it.
So you're up to 8 properties now.
Mm-hmm.
You had more than 5 for multiple years, right?
Yes.
As far as going through tenants, do you have any? What was your absolute horror story? Your absolute worst situation?
Oh, with tenants?
Because I bring this up, everyone. It always seems like everyone who has this conversation has a horror story. And I ask you because you're a self-managing landlord.
Yes.
We do it professionally, so we have different viewpoints on it. And there's pros and cons to both sides of whether or not it's good to do it yourself or have the manager do it. So we've had this conversation before. You're getting close to that point where it may be a good idea to pass it off. But
it's getting there.
What's your absolute worst horror story?
My absolute worst thank you. It gave me some time to think about it. My absolute worst horror story is with one of my properties. My tenants are actually still there. Hopefully they don't see this video. No, it's all good. They're super cool. But there's basically been what looks to be mold growing in the property.
Okay.
And it was never reported. And me being a self-managing landlord, I never went out there to inspect it or do whether it be a quarterly or semi-annual or annual inspection. I haven't done it. The tenants have been there for 2+ years, have always paid on time, never really caused an issue, just said, hey, something's broken.
That doesn't really sound like a horror story yet.
Well, no, just that they never told me this is an issue. So when they mentioned something was broken, I had a handyman go to fix it, and he sends me pictures of all this mold growing. And I'm just thinking, why did my tenants not tell me there's mold in the unit? So it's more so.
Now you're seeing dollar signs, right? What am I after?
I'm just like, oh my God, there goes all of my capital reserves for the property. But that's really it. I've been blessed. I have one Airbnb out of all my properties.
Okay.
and I guess maybe that could count as a horror story. I had someone stay during the holiday season. Dude, they trashed the place. I mean, food everywhere. They didn't make anything. Just imagine something disgusting, like things broken, whatnot. The flooring was broken a bit here and there. That's probably the biggest horror story, is that during that holiday season, they went in and just kind of did not make it like it was their own.
So I'm glad you brought that up. I'd love to get your insight on short-term rental versus long-term rental. And what kind of, you only have one short-term, mostly long-term. What's the strategy behind that? What's your approach?
The one short-term rental was more of an experiment of let's see how this goes. Let's see if, one, I can stomach it. Two, if it's profitable. Really, those two pieces. Let's just try it out. So I had some friends, actually some past clients of mine, who got into the Airbnb business, started showing me some numbers. I got a friend of mine who owns a short-term rental company, short-term rental management company. He solely does that. So he showed me some figures as well. I said, okay, let me give it a shot. So my experience so far is I've got probably like 5 months worth of data, and I'm about breaking even when it's all said and done, after paying the cleaning fees and spending all my money to furnish the place. As of right now, I'm about breaking even. So I'm not crazy about it. I want to hit a full 12 months and then go back and look at it and see, okay, what is this? Is this a long-term piece for me? Especially there's rumors of an upcoming recession this year.
Yeah.
So I want to see what's my Airbnb going to do during this season. So come this August, I'll have an even better answer for you.
So it's funny. I'm glad you brought that up, because I've done a lot of research comparing the two respective industries, short-term rental, long-term rental. And while the Central Florida area, Orlando specifically, is great for housing market, buying market, houses appreciating, short-term rental side, there's a ton of competition. National average for occupancy on Airbnbs, 46, 48%, depending what you're looking at. Orlando, you're looking either 18 to 24%, Kissimmee's 21 to 29%, that range. COVID year impacted it, but it just shows how you really have to do something for your Airbnb to have it stand out. And it's interesting that I finally got someone who can we'll see where we're at as we go through it, because everyone talks, Airbnb, you're going to make way more money. Yes, but maybe no. What's the location of your short term?
So mine's in
general area.
Mine's in Kissimmee. It's right off 192 in Poinciana, so in that area.
Highly competitive area.
Extremely. So on that point, you're 100% right. I mean, we use tons of data pieces to figure out what this would look like. So I strategically went into my first Airbnb with a low-cost, low-profit property. So I went in. I didn't go buy no $300,000-$400,000 home. I bought a small 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo where I could price it at $100, $110 a night, and that would be okay. So my thought process is, okay, recession's going to come. People are not going to book $200, $300 a night places. They're going to look for something that they could still fit their whole family in, so 4 to 6 people, but they're going to try to save a buck or two. So they're going to try to spend maybe $150, $175 instead of the $250, $300. So those that need $200, $300 to get the funds back to basically break even, they're going to be in trouble. They're going to have a challenge, and they're going to be that occupancy 21 to 29%. On my side, transparently, this January right now, I'm at 65% occupancy.
Awesome. That's good.
Ready to go. February, 98%.
Which is awesome.
It's crazy.
Top earners for Airbnb. If you're at 75%, you're considered a top earner. So that's an awesome number.
Yeah, but let me not just tell you the good news. Come September and October, I had just gotten started in August, so I did not have any reviews. So September, I was about like 30, 40%. Okay. October, I was also at about like 40. So it's more of like a build-up momentum piece. But now I'm starting to see the fruits of my labor, I guess, if you will.
Well, let me ask you a question, because I feel like in our interactions before, I would say you're calculated, but you're generally risk averse. Would you say that's accurate?
Yes. I don't like risk. I don't. So when I say that, people think, well, what the hell are you doing? You got 8 properties. Like, that's pretty risky. And I was like, I don't think so. Not on a long-term play. So yes, if I was not risk adverse, if I was like, bring it on, I'd probably have 8 Airbnbs instead of just one. For sure. But no, I'm heavy on the long-term rental side.
It's funny too, because I don't know about you, but people, you're in property management. My dad, we start talking about rental properties, like, oh, you want to be a slumlord? And I'm like, what? You know, like, do you get any? Do you talk to your friends at all? Like, we're in the same age, pretty much. We're in our mid-30s. You know, we're similar paths, and I feel like a lot of our friends don't look at real estate, or people in our friend circle or groups don't look at real estate as an investment option. What's your thought on that? What's your opinion?
It absolutely is. It is a fantastic way to just be diverse. Be diverse in your investments. Probably sound
Are you in the stock market too? I
am,
okay.
But I'm in the stock market a decent amount, and then I have my retirement accounts. So I've got a financial advisor that handles that, and then I've got my stock market piece, and then I've got real estate. So it's just a really good way to diversify. If someone doesn't want to get into 5, 10 real estate properties, fine. It's completely understandable. It's not for everybody, whether you want to self-manage or pass off to a property management company like you guys. It might not be in the books for everyone, which is okay. But still diversify. Have more than just your one primary home, because you'd be surprised. You would be surprised how much net worth you would have and how much wealthier you'd grow just by having more real estate. I think there was, and I have this one other piece. I think they were surveying like the top, I want to say it was like the top 100 or top like 200 billionaires in the entire world.
With a B.
With a B.
All right.
And 40% of them got their wealth from real estate. So,
large number. So
when I hear that, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be a billionaire, but I definitely know I'm on the track to be at least a millionaire, and it's majority going to be
to be a comfortable heir by the time you're 50.
Exactly. So that was also some more motivation of like, at bare minimum, diversify, but I'm going to go pretty heavy in it.
So you've been in the Orlando area for a long time, right? So I assume you have a network of vendors and people on the self-managing side. You have that network, correct?
Yeah. So
for the most part.
Yeah. So I've been here in Orlando 12 years now, just over 12 years. Yeah.
So. Did you have any real big? I think most of your properties were resale, correct? You didn't, not too many new construction.
No, so I don't have any new construction as of right now. I think for 2 reasons. One, there's not enough data yet, I think, when it comes to what that could potentially rent for. 2, actually, a lot of new construction, they want you to be living there rather than renting it out. And the third reason is this is kind of going down a different path, but a lot of new construction, they don't have a lot of favoritism towards mortgage brokers, which is our community.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't want to spend too much time on that side, but there's I guess you could say there's a rift between mortgage brokerage companies and then new construction companies, given that they have their preferred lenders, which are tied to their builders.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So biased or not, I've, for the time being, stayed away from new construction. Okay,
so it's good. That leads me to my next question. Did you what do you do? We have to plan for I always tell people the big ticket items, the roof, the AC, water heater, appliances. How do you approach that kind of safety net so that if something does go out, what's your plan for that?
Save your damn money. So I'm joking, but also not. So what I do when I analyze a property, I always have a certain percentage that I budget for those pieces, for those big ticket items.
So you set those aside for
Absolutely. Yeah. So what I do is I put away roughly about 12 to 15% of whatever the rent's going to be. I put that away for reserves, and that could be for a roof, an AC. It could be because a kitchen cabinet broke and that needs to be fixed. Anything from small like that to something major like a roof. I save about 12 to 15% of whatever the rent is every month into a piggy bank account, and that's what I use when things break.
Okay. Do you commingle the funds between all your properties, or are they individual?
So what I do is I actually use, there's like a landlord software, it's called Avail. It's actually owned by Realtor.com. So I use them so I can track all the payments, and then Avail sends all of the funds directly into one bank account, which I just call rental income. And then from that rental income bank account, I pay all my mortgages, I pay all my HOA dues. Everything comes from that one account. From there, I also distribute funds into the piggy bank accounts for when things break, those reserves. But everything funnels. So it goes, all my tenants pay into Avail. Avail goes straight into this rental income bank account. And then that bank account sends the money out everywhere it needs to go. To the mortgage company, the HOA, reserves, everywhere from there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So anything else you could think that's relevant to this conversation? What would your suggestion be to someone who maybe they're living in an apartment or they're thinking about buying their first house? What would you say what would their approach be? Should they be looking 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road? You know, a lot of people right now are apprehensive to buy houses in general. What would your opinion be on that?
I would say it's almost cliche, but start now. Even if it's just doing research or talking to people, just start having conversations. Just start now. Don't wait for 3 years. Don't wait for 5 years, because 3 years from now, you're probably going to say you're going to wait another year, and then it never happens. So start now. Start at least having conversations. And I don't remember who said this quote, but it was basically like, if you're going down a scary path or something you don't know, you're probably going the right way. So if you don't know, then just learn, educate yourself, have those conversations, and keep moving forward. So I'm a huge proponent. We were talking about this earlier, that I try to be on a fly on the wall, and definitely try not to be. I try not to be the smartest person in the room, so I can learn from other people and ask a million questions, so that this path that I don't know anything about, now I feel better. Now I know what the heck I'm getting myself into. Airbnb being a great example, because I didn't know anything. I'd never had one. So I had to ask questions and talk to people and do tons of digging. But it started, I bought it in August of 2022. But January of 2022 is when I told myself, I'm trying Airbnb this year.
Okay.
From January to August, it was a matter of searching for it, saving for it, and researching and talking to people. So, yeah, just start now.
Start now, Ryan. You have a saying. I love your saying. When it comes to mortgage rates and houses, what's your saying?
Oh, my God. Wait, which one? The rates in the twos or the...
No,
which one?
The marry the house, date the rate.
Oh, yeah. Marry the house, date the rate. That's another reason why it's starting now. A lot of people are scared because of the interest rates. But, dude, you can get so many discounts on houses right now. And it's just free money. People are giving you, like, discounts on the home price. They're paying for some or all of your closing costs. Like, my last place, they gave me $50,000 off the asking price.
Woo!
$50,000 off the asking price. And I got half of my closing costs covered. Why? Because I was the only buyer. I was the only person that was even interested. And the beautiful home, it had only been on the market like 3 weeks, but I'm the only buyer. The seller was motivated because she was moving out of state, and she had no other option. So I said, okay, you want this price? I'm going to offer you this. It wasn't super low ball where I was going to I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but to the point where we negotiate. Next thing you know, man, like $50,000 off of the asking. So that's another reason why it's like, okay, I married the house, right?
Yep.
My rate sucks. I get it. My rate is not the 2s or the 3s like it was 2 years ago. But we're expecting rates to come down before the end of this year, if not absolutely next year. And I'm just going to refinance.
So that brings up a question that makes me think of something. What, with that situation specifically, what point would you look at considering refining?
I would consider...
Is there a target number for the mortgage rate? Or?
Yeah, so there's a misconception that your interest rate needs to be at least 1% lower than where you're currently at. And that's wrong. It's not far off, but it is wrong. Generally about 0.75%, so 0.75. So if your rate, make stuff up here, if your rate is 6.5, and you can see that you probably qualify, you need to talk to a mortgage broker or a loan officer to figure this out. But if you find out that you're at 6.5 and you could qualify for 5.75, it'll probably make financial sense.
Okay.
Probably. Not every time, but probably. So your loan officer would then show you side by side where you're at, what this payment would do, and how much it would save you in interest over the course of 30 years or however much you have left on the mortgage.
Okay.
So about 0.75%.
So this makes me think of another question. We talk about house payments, mortgages, the belief that if you one extra payment a year on a 30-year note, usually on average, correct me if I'm wrong, is around 8 years off of the note, right? Somewhere in there, generally speaking.
That's correct.
Would you recommend doing that for everybody? Would you recommend doing that period? What's your opinion on that?
So that's a great point. And I also want to add that I got this great question was, well, if I do a second one, does that mean it goes from 22 years down to 16? And I was like, no, unfortunately not. So 30-year mortgage, take whatever your full mortgage amount is and put that directly towards your principal, and that drops your 30-year, basically paying off in 30 years down to 22.
Okay.
But if you do it again, no, it doesn't go down another 8 years, unfortunately. I only recommend someone to do that if your goal is to pay off that property soon, fast. But I, and a lot of the people that I work with, are more biased and more leaning towards spread your cash out. So let's make stuff up. Let's say that your mortgage is $2,000, right? And you got a bonus at the end of December for $4,000. And you're like, well, you know what? If I take $2,000 of that, and Brian and Chris told me that if I put that towards my mortgage, this is going to go from a 30-year down to 22. Yeah, true. Or what if you took that $4,000 that you got, keep accumulating, and you turn that into a small down payment on your next property, right? Like, let's say that you find a small little condo at, call it let's say $120,000. So small little one bedroom.
Probably closer to 170 with rates these days.
Yeah, 170. So let's be in the middle. Let's call it like 150.
All right.
So you find a little $150,000 condo. You want to buy as an investment. It's 20% down, so that's $30,000. But you've got $4,000 already as a bonus. You already started. You're more than 10% of the way there to getting that down payment for that home. That, in the long term, is potentially a lot better than just putting that money towards your home. The average amount of time that people spend in houses is 7 years. So who cares if you paid it from 30 years down to 22? I bet you my life savings that within 7 years you will be out of that house. You might still own it, but you won't be living there anymore. So there's really not too much more of a point to paying down the home unless you truly you don't have an ambition to buy more properties.
But as we've talked about, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense not to. If your long-term goal is financial stability,
gain
and
wealth,
retiring at a point where you don't have to worry about the bank account, can you think of, in your opinion, is there a safer investment than real estate? Especially in the Orlando area?
It's not specific to Orlando, but probably the safest bet is, and actually they're paying pretty decent right now, is U.S. Treasury bonds.
Okay.
A lot of people don't even think about the bond market. You think you can go to your bank and you can invest in a CD, right? Certificate of deposit. You can invest in the stock market, ETFs, all these other pieces, your IRA, 401k. But you can actually go to the U.S. Treasury's website. I don't know it off the top of my head. Maybe put that as a caption. We'll put that down there. You go to U.S. Treasury and you can buy a U.S. Treasury bond, and it could be as short as a 3-month time span, so as long as 10 years, right? Okay. The 10-year is paying 6%, 6% interest. So if real estate's not for you, but you've got that $4,000 bonus you got at the end of December and you don't know where to put it, again, it doesn't have to be a 10-year bond. It could be a 3-month while you figure some pieces out and you get your money right back. But you can go ahead and buy these bonds, and I don't know what's more secure than the U.S. government actually paying you what they tell you they're going to pay you.
I don't trust the U.S. government to pay anything. Look at that debt sheet.
I just think of the stimulus, man, and I'm like, well, they'll keep adding to the debt. So, yeah, I would say that's an option a lot of people don't think about, actually, is getting into Treasury bonds.
Okay. So, tell me why Tewes Lending. I love you guys. I think you're great, but tell everyone else why you're great.
We love you, too. It's a combination of we know our stuff. Like, we pride ourselves on being the experts, having those answers. Yeah, we're going to have great customer service. Yes, we're going to answer the phone. Yes, we're going to be there available for you 24/7. Everybody else and their mother is going to say the same thing, right? What we're going to do is actually show you all the options that you have, dive into pieces that a lot of people think, or not even think, they're not aware of. So we're going to dive into the nitty gritty with you and truly get you home. Oh, and by the way, we're fast as hell. So the average time to get into a home right now, if you look this up in the entire nation's about 35 to 37 days. Okay. From the moment you get a contract to buy a house to actually getting the keys is about 30, I think it's 36 days.
Yep,
nationwide, right? So it's there. Right now we're doing it in 20. That's our average.
Wow.
So we're talking less than 3 weeks. So maybe not now because there's not a lot of buyers out there, but when the rates drop and everybody's out there trying to buy a home and it's you and 5 other people trying to buy the same house, if you're competing with those that are taking 35 to 37 days to close, but you can tell somebody that you can close in 20 days, you're going to win.
And you'll do it.
And we'll do it. We'll get it done. That's our average. I think my fastest is actually 8 days. So we will do it. That is our average speed time. So that's why Tewes Lending. We're truly there for you. We know our stuff, and we're going to get you to the finish line practically quicker than anybody else.
So
yeah.
All right, Brian. I appreciate the time and the conversation. Buddy.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Always
man.
a pleasure.
Appreciate you.
If you guys have any questions, Tewes Lending, Brian, Chris Rich with Realty Medics, we're here to answer any questions you may have related to real estate, lending, property management, or anywhere in between. We love the phone call. We love the conversation. Even if you don't come with us, we still want to help everyone out because as we've laid out in this video, there's a lot of opportunity out there for us, but it seems like our generation, our parents taught us the wrong thing. We started practicing the wrong thing. And it isn't until you start having the right conversations with the right people that you see it is possible and you can have a ton of passive income as long as you have a plan and you're not afraid to trust the plan. That's why I picked Brian specifically, because he's a cautious, meticulous, calculated person, but in 5 years he's generated quite the portfolio. But he had a plan and he had the courage to walk through that plan, and you don't have to have 8 as your goal, but 2 or 3, think where you may be from an income standpoint. If you get into a good rate now, or if you get into a house now, and in 5 years that house is worth $150K more than it was when you bought it. Well, now you refi and you can sell or rent that property for way more money than you paid for it. Who wouldn't love to have an extra $800,000 a month on one property if you get in at the right rate at the right time? But again, start somewhere, take those first few steps, keep going, because that house is going to appreciate. Last year, 25% in the Orlando market, November to November, appreciation. Granted, a crazy market. On average, real estate goes up 8 to 10% a year. And it always, even if it goes down, it's always coming back up long term. I personally think it's one of the safest things you can do, as long as we talked about the right approach, have some money set aside for those big ticket items, or if you go the new construction route, typically don't have to worry about those big ticket items in the first 5 to 10 years. So that's another good way you can start. Get outside of the immediate Orlando area. You can get properties in the $250, $300 range. Make $1,700, $1,900 a month in rent, depending on area. You can get some good cash flow, and even if it's only $500 or $600 a month, add that up over the course of the year. You're looking at $6,000-7,000.
Oh, yeah.
Now keep that going. We talk about 10%. All right, that $250,000 house, 10% more. What are we looking at? You're $275 now, $280.
Yeah.
It's always going to be an uphill, and everyone's worried about the market right now. But we forget, for the last 2 years, we were doing this when normal's here. We're only just coming back down to what is a normal for us, So I can understand the apprehension. Maybe wait a few months if you're truly concerned about it, but we should have a pretty good idea in the next 3 to 6 months what the market's going to do. And don't waste time waiting for the rates to come down or the houses to come down, because they probably won't. And the bubble's not going to crash the way people think it will. It may decline a little bit, but situations and circumstances aren't the same. So anything to add on that, Brian?
Just marry the house, date the rate.
All right, guys. Have a good day.
Have a good day. Nice.
Sweet. I didn't take up too much time, did I?
No, you're good.